So about 15 years ago, my husband heard him at a work conference, heard John speak, and he was so moved. He came home to our apartment with a DVD with John's story on it and the book that was written by his parents. And he said, "Oh my gosh, you won't believe this man I just heard speak." He said, "You have got to watch this." And my oldest son was 7 years old at the time, and we all sat down and we watched this. It was, I think, a 12-minute segment. To this day, my son, who's now 22 years old, remembers this. And then after that, I read John's book. I listened to his podcast. And I was doing a show 7 years ago. And because I loved his podcast and his message, when I was doing publicity, I wrote him a letter to tell him how much he inspired me and would he be interested in having me on his podcast. And so I went on his podcast. And at the end of the podcast, he said, one day they're going to make my story into a movie. And when they do, I will call you. And I was like, yeah, right. But sure enough, 5 years later, I got a text from John who said, "The movie's happening. Would you like to play my mom?" And knowing the story, knowing what a force of nature his mom is, I said, of course. And it was such an honor.
Me or you?
Go ahead.
Me? I'll tell you that Denny, who I played, and Susan, they were there for a good portion of the filming. So we got to interact with them and meet them. Denny, my John's father, has had Parkinson's for the last 30 years. He passed away a few months ago, unfortunately, but he was there for a lot of our filming, and I got to know him, and I picked up a little bit from him that I slid into some of my performance. You wouldn't know it, and maybe no one else would, but I know it's there, and that's good enough. And yes, they did. They had 6 children, and when John was burned at 9 years old, 100% of his body, he wasn't expected to live overnight. That took a lot of focus from Susan and Denny. And now, their other kids were not getting the attention that they should because they had to concentrate on John for so long. So it was a big challenge.
Right. I remember, this is a quick story, but Susan O'Leary, we shot in John O'Leary's childhood home. And Susan O'Leary, the night before we shot, walked me into the house and she said, "Let me show you the house. This is where we live. This is where it all happened." And we went into her bedroom and she said, "And this is my life. It's a mess. And the life is messy." And I loved it because she was so open about life is a mess. And this is what a mother of 6 children will tell you. And she's not trying to pretend that everything is spanking clean. And I was like, that told me a lot about who she was, not trying to be perfect, just doing the best you can every day with what you're dealt.
Well, for me, John and I we were all staying in the same hotel in St. Louis here. And so John and I we would have some breakfast together or lunch or maybe have a cocktail in the evening and get to know each other and just tell each other about our lives, just to build a little connection. And that was about it. And then that was enough to sustain us through the movie. How about you?
Yeah, I didn't have that many scenes with Joel. But I think the whole vibe or energy on the set was really, it brought us together naturally. Sean McNamara, our director, John O'Leary was there. There was a playfulness that was going on. I remember we shot a scene when you are by yourself and you have that monologue with Joel. But as his mom, I'm worried about my son, my grown son. And Joel walked in front of me and I gave him a tap in the butt. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I hope that's okay. But that was such a mother thing."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, totally fine."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me first.
Yes.
When we were making the movie in the hospital portion, when the young boy's in the hospital, there's a lot of time between camera setups and lighting setups. So I would sort of sit on a little chair up against the wall, trying to stay out of everybody's way. Maybe, talk to Stephanie or someone else. And I would see John just walking around, and I could hear him, talking to people, extras, and asking them questions. So what's your story? Where are you from? What are you doing? And he was just so involved, and it was real because he didn't know that I was secretly watching him, because at this point I didn't really know him very well. So I'm kind of trying to figure him out, like, who is this guy and what does he care what this guy's life story is? But it was just authentic and real, and I found it riveting that he was like that.
Yes, and I think when you say it's real, when we see somebody like that, you feel it. You feel that it's real, and it just hits, for me, it hits me right in the heart. And then I'm like, I can be like this too. And the whole movie is about people who are really making a difference in other people's lives, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not. Even the doctor brings all the interns at one point in the hospital, and there's the janitor who's there too, cleaning the room, and the doctor says, who helped this child? Who was the most important person who helped this child heal? And the interns are like, you, no, and they say all these different, the nurses, and he says, no, it's the janitor, because for a burn victim, if there's any infection, then that's fatal. But so John does that. He just reminds you that we all can make a difference in people's lives, and we all matter, and it's real, it's honest, it's inspiring.
Thank you for your time. I truly appreciate making the time.
Thank you.
John and Stephanie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming with us and talking to us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.